This video will take you through the 2023 Rita Dove Rhetorical Analysis prompt. It will be a walkthrough, and hopefully by the end of it, you will get a good idea of how to write an introduction for any rhetorical analysis essay, but obviously specifically the Rita Dove prompt, and then also a body paragraph structure that you can use in a rhetorical analysis timed writing. So, what goes in the introduction? That is poet Rita Dove there. What goes in the introduction? Well, we need to think about the rhetorical triangle plus, and I think everybody knows what the rhetorical triangle is. It is the three tips of the triangle are message, speaker, and audience. I've created something, an infographic called the rhetorical triangle plus, where I situate situation in the middle of the triangle, because I believe that the audience and the message and the speaker all contribute to that situation. And then outside the triangle, playing on the triangle, almost like the distributive property in math, we have the rhetorical moves that the author will make. So those things all need to be in the introduction, and the prompt will almost never tell us all five of those components. Well, the prompt will never tell us the rhetorical moves that the speaker makes, and usually the prompt might give us a hint at the message, but it doesn't tell us the exact message. But we do get speaker, and we do get audience, and we do get situation very often. So message and rhetorical moves are the two that we are missing. So we know from the prompt that she is giving a speech to the graduating class at the University of Virginia at Charlottesville in 2016. We also know from the prompt that Rita Dove in 2016 was teaching at that university. And so we can use all of that information to write the introduction, but also to predict the tone of the passage. If we have a commencement address, which is very common with the AP Lang test, then it's obviously not going to be dour. It is obviously not going to be a sad address. It is going to be celebratory in some way. It is going to give advice in some way. It is also common to have eulogies as the passage for the rhetorical analysis timed writing. And if we know that it's a eulogy headed into the passage, obviously it is going to be almost the exact opposite of a commencement address, although it might still be celebratory, but it will be celebratory of someone's life who has passed away. So it's a very different kind of speech. So as we head into the Rita Dove passage, we do have some idea of what to look for. We just don't know what her exact message will be. So when we read, we're reading for message and we're reading for rhetorical moves. And I am going to annotate. I almost always read with a pen in my hand, but I think it's very, very important to read with a pen in your hand for the rhetorical analysis timed writing, because we need to annotate that timed writing for rhetorical moves as we go through. It's important to understand that the AP Lang exam, the College Board, no longer cares what you call the rhetorical moves. That is why I am not calling them literary devices or rhetorical devices. 5 or 6 years ago, I would have, because the College Board cared about labels. They have dropped that distinction, which I think is good. I don't think that it should be about memorizing a bunch of rhetorical devices. So we might label it. There's nothing wrong with labeling the rhetorical move if you know the device that it's alluding to. But if you don't know, it doesn't matter what you call it. And you might just even quote and then analyze that quote and call the quote the rhetorical move. I have students come up to me all the time and they'll say something like, I don't know what to call, and then they'll describe it. And my answer is always, call it exactly what you just said. The description that the student gives me is what I tell them to call the rhetorical move in their essay. I won't give them the label that they're probably hoping that I'll give them. So we find out that the message, as we read the passage, the message of Dove's speech is celebratory, is advice. It's give as much of yourself to everything you do as possible. And if it's possible to go beyond 100%, then do so. She talks about her father, who always encouraged her to go beyond 100%. As I annotated, I, of course, as a teacher, as someone who has written many, many synthesis essays, I know the labels. So you'll see some labels in here, but you'll see some that aren't exactly labels either. So I have ethos, allusion, metaphor, parallelism, repetition, paradox, lists, which of course isn't a device, diction, quotes, which isn't a device, speaking from experience, which isn't a device, pathos, second person, anecdote, and aphorism. And this is, of course, not an exhaustive list. Someone might read the passage and come up with twice as many rhetorical moves as I've come up with. But I annotate for all of those, and all of those came up at least once. I observed each of them at least once. And then I look at my annotations and I figure out, one, which can I write about and analyze in an extended way, in a robust paragraph. And then two, which of these rhetorical moves gives me enough information to analyze. So for example, are there 3 different metaphors versus one example of allusion? If that's the case, then most likely I'm going to have more to write about in with the metaphor rhetorical move than I would with the allusion rhetorical move. So after I've read and annotated, and I really do think that you should spend some time reading on this essay. If you put the time in up front to read carefully the passage, then it will make writing the essay so much easier, and you will gain that time on the back end. If you don't read the passage to the rhetorical analysis, if you skip it, or even if you skim it, that is a huge mistake, and you are setting yourself up for disaster on the rhetorical analysis timed writing. So, getting to the introduction. My introduction wants to use all 5 parts of the rhetorical triangle plus. Audience, message or purpose, same thing, right? Speaker, situation, and rhetorical moves. The introduction to the rhetorical analysis can be short. In fact, this one is 4 sentences long. So first, I set up the situation. Rita Dove delivered a commencement speech to the University of Virginia graduating class in 2016. That gives me the speaker, the situation, and the audience. She urges the students to make as much of their lives as possible. There's my message. She wants the graduates to go out into the world and give more than 100% of themselves to the things they're passionate about. That's also the message. And then I come in with the rhetorical moves in my thesis statement. Dove delivers this message through the use of ethos, parallelism that leads to paradox, and metaphor. And I will admit that the second term, the second idea of parallelism leading to paradox, is a pretty sophisticated idea that I wouldn't expect most students to be able to observe. But you don't have to get a perfect score on this essay. You do not have to be a teacher who has done this a million times. They know that you are writing in a 135-minute time period, and they know that it's a rough draft, and they know that you didn't have that much time to think about what you are going to write and what you are going to analyze. So first, I chose ethos. Ethos is used in lines 1 through 3 and lines 50 through 55 if you have the passage in front of you. And it talks a lot about Rita Dove's father, and both of them are the experts, because the message is give more of yourself than you think you can give. And so since Rita Dove has achieved that, and since her father had achieved that, they become quasi-experts on giving maximum effort. So I'm calling that ethos. Somebody else might call that something else. I've got parallelism that leads to paradox. And so we have I wish you hunger, I wish you hard work, and I wish you uncertainty. Those are the 3 sections of her speech once she gets going, and they appear at line 19, 41, and 83. So I'm calling the three sentences, I wish, and I wish, I'm calling that parallelism. I could also call it repetition. But it also leads to paradox. These are paradoxical statements because, of course, Rita Dove does not want the graduates to be hungry. Of course, Rita Dove does not want the graduates to be overworked. And of course, Rita Dove does not want the graduates to be perfectly uncertain. She is talking about something else. And perhaps the easiest one to look at here is I wish you hunger. We know that she's not talking about starvation here. She wishes them hunger in terms of always wanting more, always wanting to achieve more, always wanting to learn more, always wanting to be a better human being today than I was yesterday. And she has similar paradoxes for hard work and uncertainty. So metaphor is used quite a bit. Lines 19 through 21, 42 through 45, and 84 through 89. And each of the metaphors follow the I wish statements. So what we had in the previous slide, the I wish you hunger, I wish you hard work, I wish you uncertainty, each of those are then followed by a metaphor which makes sense of the paradox. So each use of parallelism plus the metaphor together, those two things together, create the paradox. Now, if you don't know the word paradox, you could call this contradiction. I would think most students would be able to observe that there's a contradiction between the first sentence, the I wish statement, and then the sentence that follows it. And even if you don't recognize it as a contradiction and you don't recognize it as parallelism and paradox or repetition, just quote the lines. You can just quote the lines and do all of the analysis based on the quote, and you would be in just as good a shape as somebody who labeled the rhetorical moves. So I thought it was important to maybe talk about what a paradox is, because it's kind of one of the most complex literary devices that we have. And a paradox is a seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement that is considered both true and untrue at the same time. I must be cruel to be kind is a fairly obscure example here, but I wish you hunger, again, I think makes perfect sense. It would be absurd for me to wish true hunger on anybody. So it's a true statement in that it could be true, right? Like I could be some evil, diabolical person wishing hunger upon somebody. But it's also untrue in that I'm not talking about food. I'm talking about knowledge. I'm talking about achievement. I'm talking about making the world a better place. So it is paradoxical in that way. Then we come to the body paragraphs. So I have a structure for the body paragraph. This is not the only way to write a body paragraph. This is a fairly formulaic way to write a body paragraph, but it would definitely do the trick. So if we come in with the first sentence and we state the rhetorical move as it relates to the speaker's message, then we will have a solid topic sentence. The second sentence is probably a quote that supports the topic sentence or a careful paraphrase that supports the topic sentence. So we have textual evidence in second position. And then the rest of the paragraph explains how the rhetorical move, again, found in that quote, helps convince us that the speaker is correct about their message. Remember that this is still a persuasive essay. You are persuading me that Rita Dove is correct in the message that she is delivering about giving more than 100% of yourself, as she says this to the graduates of the University of Virginia. So the paragraph ends up looking like this. This is part one of the paragraph, mostly summary and topic sentence. So the topic sentence is italicized, and then the underlined sentences are textual evidence. So I end up having 6 sentences of summary here, and then the topic sentence leads off the paragraph. You can see a lot of quoting in there. It is okay to quote this much if you're going to have a lot of analysis on the back end. If you are going to follow this much textual evidence with one sentence of analysis, then you do not have a good paragraph. You want to have some balance between your textual evidence and your analysis. Once you get to college, you're going to need your analysis to outweigh your textual evidence. But I would say on the AP exam, you would be in very good shape, and I have graded in Tampa. You would be in very good shape if you just had a balance or even a little bit less analysis than textual evidence. But if you have this much textual evidence and it's only followed by a sentence or two of analysis, you are probably not going to score well on the exam. So either keep your textual evidence shorter and your analysis then can be a little bit shorter. That is not really my recommendation. My recommendation would be to have this much textual evidence and then follow it with a lot of analysis. And I've doubled the amount of textual evidence I've had with the 12 sentences of analysis that I have here. So again, the structure is topic sentence followed by textual evidence, followed by as much analysis as you can eke out of that textual evidence. Explain the textual evidence. What's the significance of the textual evidence? You had an entire passage to choose textual evidence from, and you chose this textual evidence. So why? Why is this textual evidence important enough to be chosen by you? How does this textual evidence support Rita Dove's primary claim about giving more than 100% of yourself to everything that you do? And this final slide is just a graphic that I think says pretty much everything that I've said in this video, and that is the body paragraph. This goes for probably any type of essay, but we're talking about rhetorical analysis specifically. Again, you've got your thesis in first position. You've got what they're calling a sentence starter, but I would just call it evidence, textual evidence. And then again, you've got your explanation, which in my opinion would be the same as analysis. So I hope that this video will help you write a better rhetorical analysis essay in 2024, in May of 2024. And this was the walkthrough for the 2023 Rita Dove Rhetorical Analysis prompt.